The architecture of film through the eyes of George Miller. From ferry rides across Sydney Harbour to standing inside the real world that inspired Finding Nemo, this episode traces the emotional contrast between freedom and captivity while exploring how George Miller rose from a small-town doctor to the creator of Mad Max and one of the architects of the modern Australia cinema scene. Welcome to Beyond the Template. Welcome back to Beyond the Template, everyone. This podcast was created to offer up inspiration and motivation to creatives and innovators like yourself to keep going, but also reach out for a helping hand to do so. You'll hear about my own adventures, successes and failures as I try to live a creatively expressive life alongside you. I'll tell you the story of someone who I call an expander, people who built themselves up from the ground with self-determination, partnership, and collaboration. Finally, this is the More Than Just Talk podcast. Everyone here is trying to take action. So to give you all a little fuel to each of your flames, I offer a reflection question at the end to consider for the following week. We are all here to get shit done for ourselves and for the world. I truly hope that if you're listening today, you continue to work towards your own aspirations and dreams. I believe that you have the outstanding skills, abilities, and talents that you need to succeed, even if it doesn't feel that way. My business, Âme Collaborative, offers partnership to diverse thinkers, creatives, innovators, and artists who think in spirals and layers rather than straight lines. These are the individuals with large-scale visions who feel the pressure of delivery and completion. I love translating their cyclical brains and intuition into progress that is calm, logical, strategic, and linear, while upholding the soul of their work. If this sounds like you, and you have an idea you're excited about but need help with logistics, reach out. My contact is in the description for you. Last week, we stepped inside the visual worlds of Catherine Martin, the designer who translated emotion into physical environments and helped define the visual identity of modern film. I shared my trials and tribulations from house sitting with Huntsman to shining in voiceover at Afters. Well, I feel like I spun through my third week in Sydney. What a whirlwind. Last time I checked in, I was still in Lane Cove. Since then, I've attended a networking event with Afters, had drinks with one of my instructors, finished the house sit, stayed in the city center for a few nights, and am now checking in from Quakers Hill. I counted, and I have now packed and repacked my bags 10 times since the week of Christmas. And I am so grateful, but a bit sleepy. I'm happy to actually have a day or two of just working at this laptop and portable monitor, a setup that has been more than excellent on this trip. I treated myself to an Airbnb on the 26th floor of a high-rise in the middle of Chinatown, a 30-minute walk from the ferry terminals. If you follow me on social media, yes, I posted about the Airbnb and since posted about my excursions in the city. You can find these on my Instagram account at @CAmelieTravels. When I was in Christchurch, I ran into a group of 4 Australians, and when I told them I was heading to Sydney, they scrunched up their faces in disgust. "It's so hot and humid there," they said. "You should go up north," they said. I didn't understand until this week. Imagine the heat and humidity of a tropical island, but with no winds coming off the sea, because that's what being surrounded by the cityscape is, all the steam without the reprieve. I scuffled and sweated along as fast as I could, seeking the light at the end of the street galleys, but as soon as I was free from the walls of steel and concrete, it was lovely. I can't decide now if people actually love the Opera House or they just love where it's located, because that building is on the tip of the city's peninsula with wind in all directions. Needless to say, I stayed for longer than I planned. A new thing I decided to do this trip was to mark places of interest on my Google Maps app and my phone, which I have kept up since Auckland. Gold stars for want to visit and blue tags for been there, done that. It's a great visualization of how things are going. In Sydney, part of this mapping game was to find the point of view of the city, which you can see in Finding Nemo from the dentist P. Sherman's office window, the view that his fish tank overlooked. The closest I found was by taking the ferry to the Taronga Zoo, and then I walked along a water-adjacent trail to Bradley's Head Fort. I'm unsure if it was the exact vantage point that animated filmmakers used when building the Sydney Harbour world of Finding Nemo, but it was pretty damn close. The next day, despite knowing deep in my heart the messaging of Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, I went underwater at Sea Life Sydney and experienced both wonder and discomfort at seeing the mass of ocean creatures contained within glass walls. The one reprieve was how conservation was highlighted through the entire experience, and how many endangered sea creatures it housed, away from the pollution, destruction, and fishing which humans have persisted in, were actually maybe a little bit safer than they would have been in the wild. Those creatures will always be breathtaking to me, and I hope that whatever monies I spent there go to good use. Presently, I'm at the dining table of my 7th place of residence in just 2 months. I can't believe it. I finally have the stillness to focus on client work and cultivate the connections that I've been making here, and I'm so happy to have the time and presence of mind to create this next episode for you, my listeners. All of this now brings us directly into the story of someone who helped build the very foundation of the Australian film industry itself. Catherine Martin's career emerged inside an Australian film ecosystem that had already been proven possible. Decades earlier, George Miller demonstrated that ambitious cinematic worlds could be built from Australia without Hollywood backing. He did not inherit infrastructure. He forced it into existence. The scrappy, underfunded production of Mad Max showed that Australian creators could export stories globally. By the time Catherine Martin began designing films, the door Miller kicked open was still widening. To understand the environment she stepped into, we have to understand the person who built the road first. George Miller was born in 1945 in Chinchilla, a small rural town in Queensland, Australia. His parents were Greek immigrants who had fled instability in Europe and arrived in Australia with very little. His father ran a local convenience store and service station. The family lived modestly. There was no entertainment industry nearby, no visible roadmap into filmmaking. His early life was defined by distance. Distance from major cities, distance from creative infrastructure, distance from the idea that filmmaking could be a career at all. He grew up observing people in small towns. Routine defines daily life. Everyone knows everyone. The same cars pass through the same intersections. The same conversations repeat. This rhythm imprinted itself on him. So later, when he created Mad Max, he would exaggerate this isolation into something mythic, transforming familiar emptiness into cinematic landscape. His family eventually moved to Ipswich, and George attended Ipswich Grammar School. He was academically capable and followed a conventional path into medicine, enrolling at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Medicine was practical and stable and respectable, and it aligned with his family's expectations and the immigrant desire for security. But while studying medicine, he encountered film culture almost by accident. At university, he met fellow student Byron Kennedy. Kennedy was not studying medicine. He was drawn into storytelling, photography, and production. But the two became very close collaborators. Their partnership would become one of the most important creative alliances in Australian film history. Kennedy had a producer's instinct, and Miller had a director's eye. But neither had any formal film training. Instead, they learned by doing. While still in medical school, Miller and Kennedy entered a student film competition. They created a short film called Violence in the Cinema, Part 1, in 1971. The film was experimental, intense, and visually confident, and it won several awards and provided something even more valuable than recognition to these two people. It gave them proof that they actually could do this. After graduating, Miller worked as a doctor in hospital emergency rooms. This period shaped him deeply. Emergency departments exposed doctors to trauma, speed, and unpredictability. Miller saw car accident victims regularly, broken bodies, sudden violence. He saw the fragility of life, and these experiences later informed the physical realism of Mad Max. The crashes, injuries, and the chaos were not abstract inventions in his own mind. They were grounded in what he had witnessed firsthand. Medicine also provided financial stability while he explored filmmaking. Unlike many artists forced to abandon creative work for income, Miller could fund early experiments himself. And this dual life continued for years for him. He was a doctor by night, and he was a filmmaker when he had the time, just through mere ambition. In the mid-1970s, Miller and Kennedy began developing Mad Max. The concept was simple, but it was radical. A near-future Australia where law enforcement struggles to maintain order across vast highways. It was not science fiction in the traditional sense. It was speculative realism, a projection of social breakdown rooted in recognizable environments. But the barriers were immense, and there was no funding. Australia's cinema at the time lacked international distribution power. Investors did not see commercial potential, and Miller and Kennedy had to assemble a tiny budget of approximately 350,000 Australian dollars, which was really an extremely small amount even then in the 70s. They relied heavily on personal relationships, so their friends became crew members and the local motorcycle clubs appeared as extras. Locations were secured through negotiation rather than payment, and they borrowed equipment. Everyone involved had to take a risk. Filming was even dangerous. Many of the high-speed chase sequences were performed without the modern safety infrastructures you would see today on set. Stunt performers risked very, very serious injury. The production was fueled by a commitment rather than security in the project. When Mad Max was released in 1979, it became a global phenomenon. Audiences responded to its raw energy, its kinetic camera work, its stripped-down storytelling. It did not feel like a polished studio product. It felt real, urgent, possible. The film earned over $100 million worldwide, becoming one of the most profitable films ever made relative to its budget. The success changed Australian cinema permanently. It proved that global audiences would embrace stories originating outside Hollywood. It proved that resource limitations could also be overcome through creative insistence. Miller and Kennedy founded Kennedy Miller Productions, creating a stable base for future projects. Their partnership balanced creative vision and productive strategy. Kennedy handled logistics, financing, and negotiations. Miller focused on directing and creative ideation. Mad Max 2, released in 1981 and known internationally as The Road Warrior, expanded the scale dramatically. The world was more desolate, the stakes were higher, the film's visual language influenced action cinema for decades. Its imagery became foundational as reference material for filmmakers worldwide. But then tragedy struck. In 1983, Byron Kennedy died in a helicopter crash at only the mere age of 33 years old. Miller lost not just a business partner, but a creative counterpart and best friend who had been present from the beginning. This loss forced Miller to continue without the person who had helped make his career possible. Many creative partnerships do not survive such a rupture, but Miller chose to continue building, carrying Kennedy's influence forward, continuing her legacy. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome was released in 1985, starring Mel Gibson and Tina Turner. By this point, Miller was internationally recognized, but instead of repeating himself indefinitely, which he certainly could have, he expanded into new genres. In 1987, he co-directed The Witches of Eastwick, starring Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer. This demonstrated his range beyond just action movies. He was not confined to just one visual language. In the 1990s, he co-directed and produced Babe, the family film about a talking pig. This project surprised many who associated him with only violent dystopian worlds. Babe was gentle, emotionally intelligent, and widely beloved. It earned 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Miller later directed its sequel, Babe, Pig in the City, in 1998. Though darker in tone, it has since become critically respected. These choices revealed something key about George Miller. He was not driven by brand consistency, but instead by curiosity. He followed ideas rather than protecting reputation. In the early 2000s, he directed Happy Feet, an animated film about an emperor penguin who cannot sing but can dance. The film explored themes of belonging and environmental responsibility. It won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2007. Again, he defied expectations. A creator of violent road films became an Oscar-winning animation director. But one project continued to live in the background, and that was Mad Max. For years, Miller attempted to relaunch the franchise. Development delays, financing issues, and shifting industry priorities stalled progress repeatedly. At times, it seemed the project might not ever materialize. Many directors lose momentum over decades, but Miller did not. Finally, in 2015, Mad Max Fury Road was released. Miller was 70 years old. Most directors at that age are retired or slowing down. But Miller instead was relentless, and Fury Road proved to be both innovative and visceral. The film relied heavily on practical effects rather than digital simulation, creating physical authenticity rarely seen in modern action cinema. The film starred Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron and introduced a new generation to the Mad Max universe. It earned 10 Academy Award nominations and won 6, including editing, production design, and costume design. Critics widely considered it one of the greatest action films ever made. This achievement was not simply artistic, but artistry through a temporal lens, as Miller had managed to carry it across decades through technological shifts, personal loss, and industry transformation. And he didn't stop there. In 2024, he released Furiosa, a prequel exploring the backstory of Charlize Theron's character from Fury Road. The film starred Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. Miller, now in his late 70s, continued directing at a scale most filmmakers never even reach in their youth. Miller's endurance is perhaps his most defining trait. George Miller did not build a career through speed. He was not an overnight success or a one-hit wonder. Instead, his creative career was scaffolded through continuity, adaptation, and his willingness to evolve with the times. Today, George Miller remains active in development and filmmaking. His production company continues producing film and television projects. His influence is visible not only in his own films, but in the global language of action cinema. He may have begun as the son of immigrants in a rural town, but he lifted himself up to become a doctor for stability and then discovered filmmaking through friendship. From there, he built an industry through persistence, and now decades later, he continues to create. Miller's story shows us two things. Success is not about a magical arrival, and it is never too late to share your creativity and ingenuity with the world. Next week, we follow the path forward through Chris Hemsworth, who stepped into George Miller's Mad Max universe in Furiosa and represents a later generation of Australian talent exported onto the global stage. Miller built the mythology, but Hemsworth inherited its expansion. Their careers exist decades apart, yet they share the same underlying trajectory. Both began in Australia, and both carried Australian storytelling outward. Okay, all my makers and shakers, this is the More Than Just Talk podcast. After all, it's time to put what we've learned into practice. Here's what I want to leave with you this week. So write it on a sticky note, put it in your journal, or somewhere you will see it. George Miller spent years living a double life. He was both doctor and filmmaker. He sustained and existed within stability and uncertainty at the same time. So this week, I want you to think about your own dual identities. What is the stable structure in your life right now that protects you? And what is the quieter creative identity developing alongside it? Instead of forcing yourself to abandon one for the other, ask yourself how the stable version of you might actually be funding, protecting, or strengthening the creative version. Sometimes the bridge is not a leap. Sometimes it is something you build slowly and quietly while no one else is watching. To all my listeners, thank you for joining me today. I hope you continue in the pursuit of your projects and your dreams. Keep it up. keep it creative. Follow your dreams when my dream's crazy. I was swimming alone with something under me. Follow your dreams, but dreams are hazy. Was there treading a pool where blue in the deep. Ooh. Follow your dreams, but my dream's crazy. I was flying atop rows of orchard trees. Follow your dreams, but dreams are hazy. Waited low on the ground, grasping air to flee. Ooh. When the air is thick and the road is long, it's easy to forget how to sing your song. But dreaming can only get you so far. With dust in your eyes, not knowing where to start. Follow your dreams, move through precision. Use that song in your heart for each intention. Follow your dreams, thoughts true, attempted. Your creation exists just beyond the template.